October certainly has been an exciting time for Mickey D's. If you're anything like me, you probably spent some time hunting down those odd little cactus plant flea market adult Happy Meals. Boy, those went fast. The toys had an interesting look, and those extra pair of eyes really helped them to fit in well with spooky season.
Don't forget about the return of the Happy Meal Boo Bucket. If you're old enough, you'll likely remember these lovely little plastic tubs from the 80s and 90s. If you forgot, well, you are in luck because we've already covered the subject here on our channel.
Do you know what I'd like to see?
Halloween treat coupons gifting a free soft drink or small cone?
No. Well, yeah, those are cool too. But I was gonna say the Halloween McNugget Buddies.
Toys with changeable costumes, one with each Happy Meal you buy your kids. Finally, McMummy in a spooky mix and match outfit.
They only appeared twice that I can remember, but left a pretty big impact. Maybe we should start one of those internet campaigns. Grab some signatures, hashtag bring back Halloween McNugget Buddies.
That's a long hashtag. How about we talk about these lovable guys first? In this video, we'll be exploring the cultural impact of the Halloween McNugget Buddies, as well as some of the frightening figures and movie monsters that inspired their looks. If that sounds like fun, then do us a favor and click that like button, and why not supersize your experience by subscribing to Retro Spectrum.
Isn't it interesting how so many people are fascinated with the supernatural? It's not even a new phenomenon. Early man did their best to explain things they struggled to understand, like why the sun rises and sets and why Grandma Edith never woke up. The Egyptians were especially enthralled by the idea of death and the afterlife. Mummification was in vogue back in ancient Egypt around 2800 BC. The purpose was to keep the body intact so that it could be transported into the spiritual afterlife. I mean, no one wants a bunch of freaky phantoms floating around, haunting cemeteries and whatnot.
Piss off, ghost! He's freaking gone.
Ghost sightings are by no means a recent anomaly. Some of the earliest recorded sightings go all the way back to 856 AD. They weren't just roaming cemeteries either. They were haunting everything from barns to battlefields. Heck, Henry VIII's late wife, Anne Boleyn, was reported to be seen wandering the Tower of London well after her execution back in 1536.
She was beheaded.
I know.
I bet Willie Shakespeare was a fan of ghost stories like these, since spirits and apparitions were frequently included in his plays like King Hamlet. Shakespeare was definitely a fan of the supernatural. Remember those eerie witches that showed up in Macbeth? The wayward sisters were kind of like prophets, similar to the fates in Greek myths. We should mention, not everyone was all that entertained with witchcraft. Over in the colonies, those wackadoo Salem witch trials were in full swing by around 1692. Some 200 people were accused of questionable practices, and I think 19 people were executed.
Fairy tales didn't do any favors for witches either. Stories like Hansel and Gretel really made them look like jerks. Abducting children and such, it's not a good look.
But people sure do like scary stories. Remember Mary Shelley's Frankenstein? It was released in 1818 and became one of the defining pieces of literature in the horror genre. Just try to remember that Frankenstein is the name of the scientist, not the monster.
Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol introduced us to a number of spirits in 1843, like Scrooge's business partner Jacob Marley, forced to wander the earth wrapped in chains as punishment for his sins in life, his lack of compassion for his fellow man, and his overall predisposition of being a nasty dude.
Bram Stoker was quite the horror novelist at the time. In 1897, he released Dracula, the tale of an immortal vampire living in Pennsylvania. Transylvania, forced to feed off the blood of the living, cursed with an insatiable hunger.
We get it.
Bram Stoker also wrote The Jewel of the Seven Stars, which I think was one of the earliest pieces of literature to explore Egyptian mummies and all the wacky hijinks that coincide with those old school rappers. You know, by the early 20th century, people were absolutely fascinated with pyramids, pharaohs, and mummies. This was likely inspired by the excavation of the Valley of the Kings, as well as the discovery of King Tut's tomb in 1922.
That same year, the silent horror masterpiece Nosferatu was released in Germany. This unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula introduced audiences to Count Orlok, one of the most terrifying vampires to grace the silver screen.
The cinema wasn't the only medium celebrating the supernatural. In 1930, Harvey Comics introduced us to Casper, the friendliest of ghosts. After that, the 30s became synonymous with Universal monster movies.
Listen to them. Children of the night.
Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, was released in 1931. Boris Karloff appeared in several films, including The Mummy and Frankenstein. Of course, Karloff was a pretty talented thespian, so it should come as no surprise to hear he could pull off a little romance as well. In 1935, he starred in The Bride of Frankenstein. Toward the end of the 30s, there were a couple of actresses who casted a spell on audiences. Lucille Laverne voiced both the Evil Queen and the Wicked Witch in Walt Disney's adaptation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Margaret Hamilton brought us one of the most iconic villains of all time in The Wizard of Oz. Now, if you are a dog lover, you might be interested to know that Universal's Wolfman wouldn't come out until 1941. And for those of you who love swimming, The Creature from the Black Lagoon wouldn't be released until the 1950s.
Hey, I think we talked about Old Thin Face in a previous McDonald's Unboxed. Wasn't that movie filmed in North Florida?
That's right. And speaking of the Sunshine State, remember when we stopped by Universal Studios Florida and snagged a Frankenstein toy from one of those iconic Mold-O-Matic machines?
How big it is compared to my head.
Hold it, size comparison.
So we just got Frankie Boy at Universal Studios. He's a big boy and he smells good. What'd you say it smells like?
It smells like burning plastic.
Smells like burning plastic.
In 1948, two brothers revolutionized the fast food industry with their newly renovated, all-new, all-different McDonald's restaurant. That same year, comedians Bud Abbott and Lou Costello met Frankenstein's monster. It wouldn't be long before they encountered the Invisible Man, both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as the Mummy.
Yeah, Abbott and Costello were neat, but I definitely appreciate the more serious, cultured horror that we came to expect from all those Hammer film productions in the late 50s into the early 60s. The Mummy, the horror of Dracula, the curse of Frankenstein, the curse of the Wolfman. You know, that's a lot of cursing. It wouldn't surprise me if all these films were rated R.
You know who else loves to curse?
Who's that?
Witches. And I've got a few magical maidens I think we should discuss. C.S. Lewis gave us the White Witch in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Casper gained a new friend in 1954 with Wendy the Good Little Witch. Over at Archie Comics, we got Sabrina Spellman in 1962. And Marvel gave us The Scarlet Witch in 1964.
Don't forget about Samantha Stevens. The Bewitched television series premiered on ABC in 1964. And if that wasn't enough, we also got the gothic soap opera Dark Shadows, the animated cartoon Frankenstein Jr., along with everyone's favorite frightening family, the Munsters. Dang, I love that track. You know what was another great spooky song in the 1960s? The Monster Mash. It was a graveyard smash.
It caught on in a flash.
It sure did, because by the time we reached the end of the 60s, everyone seemed primed for a frightening fiesta.
Mad Monster Party!
Rankin Bass Productions gave us the Mad Monster Party in 1967, and the Walt Disney Imagineers welcomed theme park attendees to a swinging wake in 1969.
The popularity of the Haunted Mansion was such a big deal for Disney. They'd been planning on this thing for years that it became absolutely essential that they opened one here in Disney World, Walt Disney World Resort in 1971 with the opening of the park. And so one of my favorite attractions. There it is. Such a beautiful, beautiful building. You gotta love the Haunted Mansion.
Speaking of Disney, how many people remember Miss Eglantine Price from Bedknobs and Broomsticks? Angela Lansbury made an incredible witch. The 70s probably rivaled the 60s in sheer volume of monster content. In 1971, General Mills gave us 3 of my favorite creepy, crunchy characters: Frankenberry, Boo Berry, and the greatest vampire parody of all time, Count Chocula.
Nothing could tear me away from my Count Chocula cereal. Who's that? Good morning.
Real Dracula.
For real? May I have some? You can have mine. I'll sink my teeth into
What?
the delicious chocolatey marshmallows in Count Chocula cereal.
Oh, yeah. And it's part of this complete breakfast, too. How about the monster for breakfast today?
For real?
I don't know. I think I prefer Count Von Count from Sesame Street.
He doesn't suck blood, so does he really count?
Oh, he counts.
Do you know why they call me the Count? Because I love to count things.
I know.
Check out all the pumpkins at SeaWorld Orlando. What'd you find?
I found one Count pumpkin.
Just one?
Just one.
Oh, what if we wanted more counts?
Well, let's go find them. I found more. We got 1 count, 2 count, 3 count, 4 count, 5 count, 6 counts. We are gonna go and see a monster.
Elmo? Hi, Elmo. I love the Halloween costume. It's fabulous. Fabulous, right? So good.
The 70s were an interesting time for Marvel as well. As the Comic Book Code Authority loosened some of their rules and restrictions, it made it possible to include more horror elements in comics. So in 1971, it was officially Morbin time as Morbius the Living Vampire first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 101. In the following years, we experienced the Tomb of Dracula and Blade the Vampire Slayer. After that, there was Werewolf by Night, Nkantu the Living Mummy, and the Monster of Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein.
Oh yeah, while we were chatting about Frankie Boy, who can forget about one of my all-time favorite movies, Young Frankenstein? Mel Brooks brought us this comedic masterpiece in 1974, and it starred Gene Wilder as Dr. Frederick Frankenstein.
Hey, you know, Fruit Brute cereal was released in 74 as well.
I love Fruit Brute, my new fruit-flavored cereal.
I think you mean Fruit Brute.
No, it was originally spelled Fruit. My guess is they had to change the name since it's made with artificial flavoring and not real fruit.
But new Fruit Brute has fruit-flavored sweeties for the howling good taste of fruit.
Of course, if artificially flavored frosted cereal isn't your thing, McDonald's started to roll out the Happy Meal during the 1970s. Unfortunately, the chicken nugget was still a few years off. 1980 brought us Hanna-Barbera's Drac Pack, and Namco gave us a little yellow Sprite, hungry for some Ghost. Doesn't seem like they'd be all that filling though, which is fine because in 1983 McDonald's would finally release the Chicken McNugget. I'm sure this will come as no surprise, but if you'd like to learn more about these delicious little nuggies, check out our designated video. After that, Roald Dahl's book, The Witches, showed up on shelves at Walden Books or, wherever you bought books back in the 1980s. Speaking of books, we were introduced to Ray Stantz, Egon Spangler, and Peter Venkman during their direct encounter with a full torso apparition in 1984. The popularity of this film led to the Real Ghostbusters cartoon and a Ghostbusters Happy Meal.
Real Ghostbusters school supplies, only at McDonald's.
The Real Ghostbusters was a fun show, but do you remember?
Hey, Count Duckula.
Sure do. Used to watch it on Nickelodeon. Now let me ask, do you remember the Thundercats?
You mean the team of feline fighters battling the evil Mumra, the ever-living?
That's the one. Mumra lived in a black pyramid and used to summon the ancient spirits of evil in order to go all Old Testament on those little pussycats.
I think the Thundercats always seem to land on their feet.
Some of my favorite horror video games were released in the 1980s. Castlevania. Also, Ghosts and Goblins.
Still waiting for you to beat either of those games.
Don't hold your breath.
The 80s also gave us some of my favorite horror-inspired films, including the original Frankenweenie, Teen Wolf, Lost Boys, and Kiki's Delivery Service.
I mean, she's a witch, so I can dig it. What about Beetlejuice?
What was that?
Beetlejuice?
You said it twice. Just say it once more. Come on.
Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
The Ghost with the Most was so popular. They brought him back from the grave for his very own animated series and a Burger King Kids Club meal.
Now at Burger King, Beetlejuice figures. With the lovable characters from Beetlejuice on one side and on the other. You can get 6 in all, one each time you buy a Kids Club meal. Now
So let's finish out the decade, shall we? For breakfast, we were serving the all-new Fruity Yummy Mummy.
Hey, have a bite. It's new Fruity Yummy Mummy cereal. Yummy Mummy makes your tummy go yummy.
And for lunch, let's head over to McDonald's to enjoy the first ever McNugget Buddy Happy Meal.
They get one McNugget Buddy toy with each McDonald's Happy Meal you buy. And every McNugget costume is removable to switch, mix, and rearrange.
buy anything yet?
No, I'm still window shopping.
So we've finally made it to the 1990s. The seriously shy spirit species known simply as Boo appeared in the American release of Super Mario Bros. 3, but didn't show up as a toy in the subsequent Happy Meal. That said, Game Freak gave us our first 3 ghost-type Pokemon in 1996, and Burger King made sure Gengar got his own toy in their Kids Club meal. So I guess, score 1 for the king.
Speaking of ghosts, remember that iconic bit of cinema known as
Ghost Dad.
I told you we were gonna leave that one out of this video, so drop the dad, just Ghost.
Oh yeah, Patrick Swayze, Whoopi Goldberg. I think the movie was about pottery.
You never saw it, did you?
I never saw it, no. Admittedly, I think I was too busy watching Ghost Rider on PBS. Remember those teenage sleuths solving mysteries with the help of a spirit who'd take words and text to speak with the group? Eventually, though, I'd grow out of that show and pick up something a bit more sophisticated, more cultured. I'm talking about the Big Bad Beetleborgs on Fox Kids. They were a little like the Power Rangers, except younger, and they got their powers from a comic book. Oh, and instead of hanging around a robot and a big floating head, they spend all their time in a haunted house. Off the top of my head, I think the supporting cast included Mums, Frankenbeans, Wolfgang, Count Fangula, and a pipe organ playing poltergeist named Flabber.
At no point did any of this sound familiar.
Oh, come on! They even had their own Happy Meal.
There were a few more movies we should highlight since we have time. In 1992, we witnessed Paul Rubin play a bloodsucker in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and actor Gary Oldman took on Keanu Reeves, Winona Ryder, and Sir Anthony Hopkins in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Interview with a Vampire was released 2 years later. I like to watch all 3 back-to-back and pretend it's a vampire trilogy.
That's odd, but fun. Speaking of odd, we have to mention that Hocus Pocus was released the same year as Nightmare Before Christmas. I feel like Disney wanted 1993 to be Halloween all day, every day.
Plus, Winifred Sanderson was 100% that witch. Mickey's brain was implanted into a giant lumbering beast by a mad scientist named Dr. Frankenolly, which is a fun little nod to Disney legends Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson.
You might remember seeing that animated short play before the Disney live-action classic, A Kid in King Arthur's Court.
And while we are discussing classic cinema, I think everyone remembers The Mummy starring Brendan Fraser. You know, one more thing I want to bring up before we go full on Happy Meal is the greatest fighting game of all time, Darkstalkers. It's a lot like Street Fighters, but instead of a character selection screen full of ethnic stereotypes, you can select your favorite monsters. It's absolutely rad. In 1993, the McDonald's crew decided to bring back the McNugget Buddy Happy Meal, but this time with a spooky twist.
It was late one night in the castle of the Chicken McNuggets.
Cool costume, Ronald.
Show off.
But the McNugget Buddies need costumes too. We don't want to be chicken on Halloween.
So here's our first one, and I'm gonna take it out of our boo bucket. It's the Mummy, a Chicken McNugget mummy.
So spooky.
Covered in wrappings, a M on the front. You can turn it around, check it all out. And all of these you can undress and check them out in Chicken McNugget form and swap their clothing a little bit. It's really neat that way, just like all the other Chicken McNugget buddies. You want to check out what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next up we have
something magical.
a wicked witch.
It's a wicked witch, and she's wearing this beautiful purple cloak and purple hair, carrying a broom, and has that little witch's hat on top. And again,
Every witch has to have a hat.
pop them off. This one's a little bit more difficult to get that cape off of. And she's got these beautiful lashes, and pop everything back on. Very, very neat. I like this one.
I like how everything has M's on it.
Yep, McDonald's insignia everywhere. You ready to check out the next one?
Absolutely.
What are you making? Sauce. We're using my mummy's recipe. Mummy.
For the next one, let's see what we got inside here. And it is
Ooh.
Dracula.
I like that bat on top.
Dracula. I wonder if he sucks like what do you
Ketchup?
call it? Ketchup or
Sweet and sour
sauce or barbecue sauce or whatever. Take him out. He's still got a little fangs when you take him out, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, he's got a great face.
This is another one that's one of my favorites. I love the hairline. I love the little hairdo. I love the bat on top. Just such a really, really cool one. What do you think is next? Which one do you think is next?
Ooh, I can't even guess.
All right, let's check it out. And it turns out to be the ghost.
Perfect.
The ghost is cool. It's only got one thing it's wearing. I mean, it's got a hat on top and all that, but it's only wearing a cloak. You take it out and you can check him out. I also like his little pet.
Yeah, right? And ghosts, they're quintessential for Halloween.
Absolutely. And like I said, the quintessential ghost wearing the sheet on top. Just a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
This better be good.
It'll be great.
Does your daddy have a recipe?
One of my all-time favorites. I think they're all my favorites.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, Frankenstein. Frankie boy here. He's got the quintessential universal Frankenstein kind of flat head
This
on
one's
top.
got hands.
Wonderful expression. Yes, it is. Is this the only one that has hands? Weird. This is the only monster that has hands.
So far, yeah.
That's kind of cool, but he's got that quintessential dopey expression on it, and I just always think this one's kind of cool. The hat doesn't love to stay on, but I think he's really cute. I know there's only one more left in this set.
Okay.
Do you want to check it out?
Sure do.
You know, I ordered this from a very suspicious person. Let's see if we got everything that we were supposed to get. And it looks like the last one is gonna be, this is a 80s rocker. This is not what we're supposed to get. This is actually from, you can see, check out the face. This is actually from the second set of Halloween toys. We were supposed to get a pumpkin.
We don't have the pumpkin?
So we're missing that. We're gonna have to go out and start searching for this pumpkin.
That's right.
All right, let's do it. Let's finish up this video.
We have to get them all.
Finish up the video and go get the pumpkin.
All right.
But you don't want to be chicken hook on Halloween.
Anything you want,
Anything you dare.
it all depends on what you wear.
Twins!
Well, I had a lot of fun this video.
Ooh, you weren't too scared.
No, I'm not scared. Maybe a little hungry. Let's wrap this up so I can grab some chicken nuggies.
Sounds good.
Okay, now we'd like to hear from our viewers. Do you have any fond memories of Halloween, and who is your all-time favorite monster? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and consider subscribing to Retro Spectrum so you don't miss a single episode of McDonald's Unboxed.